Okay, in this activity, we are going to start making some recognizable shapes, or we're going to try to start making some recognizable shapes. So previously we did some random lines and curves and stuff like that, and now we're going to actually start working on using that pen tool to create some stuff that looks like something. So go ahead and open up your artwork. When you do so, you might notice that there's this rectangle or square in the middle of your artwork or somewhere that doesn't match up with your artwork. That's just your artboard. So if you click on your artboard tool, which looks just like that right there, you can increase or decrease the size of that so that it matches up with your artwork. Just FYI. It's not necessary, honestly, but if it bothers you, you can go ahead and fix that. The next thing I want you to do is open up your layers, and I actually just did that already, but open up your layers, and what I want you to do is lock this first layer. So hit that little, it was a blank square right there next to my eyeball, but click right there and I get that little lock. We want to lock that layer so we don't accidentally edit it, and then we want to create a new layer, and that's the layer that we are going to work on right there. So that layer 2 is what we're going to work on. Okay, so in this video and in this activity, you are going to work on the first 5 steps in this little image. So step 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Number 6, we're going to leave off until our next activity. So I'm going to zoom into my first one. So I panned over by pressing and holding the space bar and pulling with my mouse. And now I'll just zoom into the star. The star will be a piece of cake because you've done this stuff already. So I'm going to choose my pen tool. When I do that, I want to change my fill color so that there is no fill. So none for the fill color. And then the stroke, just choose something that's nice and bright and bump the stroke weight up to 4 points. And I have that information right there. Your little hints right at the top of that image. And now all you're going to do is make a bunch of straight lines into a star shape. So go ahead and create your star. This will be a nice little warm-up. This first one and the next one are kind of just warm-ups and reviews from the last activity. Once we get into little activity number 3, then they'll get a little bit more complicated and it will be new information. So go ahead and make your star. Piece of cake. Okay, I'm going to pan over to number 2. Number 2 we've done before, so just random curves. So you're clicking and dragging with your mouse just to make random curves. Some are straight lines in there, which is not a big deal. Just make sure you have some random curves. It doesn't need to look like anything. You do need to pay attention to this information again. So no fill, 4-point stroke. It should keep it in there, but just in case, just pay attention to it in case it changes. So go ahead and make those. And now we are on to number 3. This is where it gets a tiny little bit tricky, but honestly, once you start doing it, it'll be okay. So I'm going to make sort of egg or circle shapes in this square. So what I could do is I could click once, move my mouse over and drag out. And when I do that, I get a curve, but it's not exactly the curve that I want. So I'm going to try to learn how to control that curve a little bit more. So I'll just complete that shape and get rid of it. Okay, so I have your little hint up here. Press and hold the shift key while drawing your circles to make perfect curves. Okay, great. So I'm pressing and holding the shift key and I can make a curve, but it's not perfect. Far from it, right? So we need to pay attention to this next part. Move your mouse straight down from the first anchor point. So I'm going to press and hold the shift key. I'm going to keep it pressed in this entire time. So press and hold the shift key. Now I'm going to click, keeping my mouse pressed in, and drag out straight down. Release my mouse, pull it over to the side. I'm going straight over from my first anchor point, so something right over here. Click, drag, shift key is still pressed in. Now I have my mouse depressed as well. And I'm trying to kind of match up my handles, release my mouse button, shift key still pressed in. I'm coming back to where I started. I can see that my path has been completed by that little circle that's below my cursor. And now I'm going to click and drag out. So let's repeat that process. Shift key was pressed in the whole time. So shift key is pressed in, click once and drag down. So don't click and release, click or keep your mouse key pressed in. Move my cursor over to the side, click and drag down till my handles are about even, about there. Come back over here where I started, click and drag and release my mouse. So shift key is pressed in the whole time. Let's do that one more time. So shift key is pressed in, click, drag down, mouse key is still pressed in, release my mouse button, pull it over to the side, click, drag, release my mouse button, move my cursor, click, drag, release my mouse button. And you can do those circles either way. They can be a little bit taller than they are wide, or they can be wider than they are tall. Again, that one's a little bit tricky, so hopefully you can get that. Teardrop is sort of a breath of fresh air after that one because it's not that complicated. So I'm going to click and release, pull my mouse straight down, click and drag out till my handles get a little bit wide. Release my mouse, come back up to where I started, click and release. So click and release, pull my mouse down, click, drag, release my mouse, come back up to where I started. So again, these are kind of a piece of cake. So click and release, pull my mouse down, click, drag, release my mouse, come back to where I started. Again, piece of cake. Okay, so here it gets a little bit complicated again, just sort of though. So what I can do is I can create a circle just how we talked about creating circles a minute ago. So I'm going to press and hold the shift key, kind of create sort of a, it's not a perfect circle, but it is kind of a nice little oval there. And now I have that made. I'm going to switch to my direct selection tool, and now I'm going to press the Alt key to separate my handles. So press and hold the Alt key, click and drag this handle up, and I get that little lump on the top. Do the same thing over here, and it separates my handles. I can control them separately rather than together. So if I were to move this one, which I didn't separate, those both would move together. They're affected by each other. These, on the other hand, that I've separated, I can move this one as however I want, and it doesn't affect that one. So that's kind of cool, right? Okay, switching back to my pen key, or my pen tool, click and release, come over here, click and drag. I need to separate my handles here again by pressing and holding the Alt key. I'll move that up, come up to the top, and there we go. So do that a couple of times, or make a few different apples just for practice. And then this step number 6 we will cover in the next video.